welcome back. With me in the studio is Chantal Arendse and Andrew Bennett, and they're from CropLife. And today we're going to be talking about a good and solid stewardship and how it incorporates an integrated pest management system. Chantal, welcome back. It's lovely having you back. We had a lovely chat yesterday. Andrew, and welcome to you as well.
Thank you.
So when we talk about IPM or an integrated pest management system, what do we mean?
Well, yeah, integrated pest management, is the optimal use of a diverse number of pest control strategies, and that is to manage pests to an acceptable threshold level, that is cost-effective for farmers, as well as, is good for the environment, as well as safe for human health. So that's just in a nutshell. But when it comes to IPM, I think what is key there is diversity. So it's not one specific pest control management tool, but using, all of them in a holistic and integrated manner.
Now, yesterday we spoke about new technologies and how it impacts farmers' production practices. So what does the IPM toolkit of today look like versus the one that we had 50 years ago?
Yeah, it's really exciting, I think, because we have all those products from long ago, but we also have all the new modifications to the crop plant itself, where the crop plant is inherently insect resistant or it's able to withstand a herbicide. Basically, the GMO technology, the GMO toolbox that comes in there, has really revolutionized things, I think, yeah.
How has this helped farmers with their production practices?
I think essentially, it's kind of difficult. There's not one size that fits all. So farmers need to work it out for their systems on each of their farms. But the new technologies that deliver really good insect control and really good weed control just make it that much easier for the farmer to plan his day and his season. The BT crops that we have are really, really good. They're delivering superb control 24/7, and that was not always possible with insecticide applications. However, the BT crops are very targeted, so they're not covering all of the pests. Now you can come in with really directed applications against specific pests, so that lowers your total pesticide usage. It improves let's call it the ecology on the farm. And so these things are all really very helpful. And as we learn how to combine all these different components, so the whole system becomes more and more effective. Yeah,
and also just, Andrew mentioned, the research has proven, I think there is evidence that with the introduction of biotech crops, the number of pesticide or herbicide applications has in actual fact gone down, the use. And that is good for the environment as well, because, as you know, these days sustainability is also quite a big word, and that fits right in as well with sustainable practices as well.
I think it's really important to consider how many passes a tractor used to make over a field versus how many it does now, and the impact of that on the carbon footprint is immense. Yeah.
Now, one of the factors that also play a role in sustainability, of course, is resistance. And I mean, we all know that nature finds a way to build up resistance. So what are the main contributing factors that lead to resistance when we're talking about biotech crops, for instance?
Yeah. So, when it comes to resistance, just to point out that resistance is not unique to biotech crops. It is an issue for whether it's organic, whether it's conventional farming.
True.
And so this is something that, all farmers should, pay good attention to. But I would say, in general, farmers, there are specific, strategies that farmers need to follow to manage resistance or delay the onset of resistance. And this includes, making refugia part of the planting. And if you're asking, why refugia? Well, refugia is just the non-conventional crop without the specific BT gene. And the refugia helps just to keep those pest levels or resistance levels down, in terms of ensuring that there's a susceptible number of insect pests around in sufficient numbers that have not been exposed to the Bt protein. And this just helps to delay. And that's one of the main strategies, but that's not the only one. You know, the original Bt maize crop was just a single traded crop. And so obviously it's there to encourage farmers to also take up stacked traded crops, which have multiple insect-resistant genes. And these offer more than one mode of action against a specific targeted pest. So those are the main strategies, I think, against resistance. But it's not just that. It takes place within a holistic approach. So you still need to complement with all the other good agricultural practices. And each situation, as Andrew mentioned, to your farm is unique. So you need to understand what's going on your farm, and also monitor where the issues are, and use those IPM practices accordingly.
Of course. I think what's really it's amazing. The principles are the same. It's just incredible. If we can introduce more modes of action in a Bt crop, that helps a lot. Yeah. But if we look at insecticides as well, or herbicides, the more modes of action we can employ, instead of using the same mode of action over and over, that principle works for insecticides and pesticides as well. So one can see the sort of overall strategy is really around increasing the modes of action that you use within a season, and not following with the same modes of action one after the other. Yeah. And in that way, I think we generate a much more sustainable environment.
Yeah, I think especially now that you mention different weeds as well, I think we've seen the emergence of some nasty weeds over time, and it's to me it's almost every decade brings something new and stronger and more resistant. I think if we look at something like Palmer amaranthus, for instance. So what can we do when we see something that's that bad and that nasty to control it effectively on our farms?
So again, Palmer amaranth developed its resistance because of the reliance of farmers in America on glyphosate. So again, it was a case of kind of a bad practice, using the same mode of action over and over again. The good news is there are lots of different modes of action available. So while it is a little perhaps inconvenient for a grower that maybe relies a lot on glyphosate, there are other herbicides that are effective. So again, it's about looking at your situation on your farm, choosing an alternate mode of action that is still effective. There are a lot of other things, particularly with Palmer, because it produces a gazillion seeds. So if you can do a lot of sanitation in the field, make sure that you clean your implements once they've been in those fields so that it doesn't spread the seed somewhere else, stuff like that also plays a big role.
Like again, I mentioned earlier, it's about diversity. That is key for integrated weed management. So it's not just one solution, plant a herbicide-tolerant crop and sit back and relax. You need to actively be in your fields and know what's happening on your farm, and to be able to respond, accordingly.
Another very important part of this whole concept is the concept of monitoring and being aware of what's going on. So as a farmer, if you notice that a herbicide's not working as well as it used to, you really need to go and tell the distributor or the owner of that product, so that they can look into it and see if resistance is developing. If you can catch resistance early, you have a much better chance of providing a solution that's effective than if you catch it very late. So the farmers are the best ears and eyes out there, and I know sometimes companies don't always enjoy complaints about their products, but actually that's where you pick up these problems, is when something has failed. Now, most times it can not be resistance, it's something else that's caused the product failure. But we need to be vigilant. For those few times when it is resistance, it's really important to pick it up early.
Yeah, and I think one of the practices that's also good management practice is rotational cropping,
Absolutely.
Because you've got your broadleaves and then you've got your grass types, and if you keep on mixing those up, it will just improve your efficacy. When we look at Bt crops and all these different technologies. We've been doing this for 20 years in South Africa, and I think we are planting more than 80% of the crops in South Africa are GMOs. What is the level of compliance of our South African producers when it comes to managing this technology?
Okay, so I do speak under correction, but Andrew can back me up here. As far as I can tell, the compliance rate amongst the commercial farmers is up to 90%. So that is, the compliance level for commercial farmers. But of course, it's not only our commercial farmers who are planting herbicide-tolerant crops and BT crops. Yeah. We have a pipeline coming up from smallholders who are also adopting the newer technologies, as well as the emerging commercial farmers. And I think maybe there's definitely room to address that gap, because I think, while the focus is on the commercial farmers, it would be short-sighted not to also look at where our future farmers are coming from, and to make sure that they also have the required knowledge, and also, to comply with the requirements for IPM as well, and as well for resistance management when cultivating the new technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the seed companies have been really good about making it easier to be compliant, if I can put it that way, but without losing the efficiency of that resistance management requirement. So for example, for small farmers that are only purchasing maybe 2 or 3 or 5 kilograms of seed, they've actually included in a sleeve inside the seed the seed for the refuge. So that makes it easier for the smaller growers to be compliant. I think what's difficult is actually being able to get to those farms and to check if everything is going well. So there's a need for an ongoing training program across the board, actually. Yeah. I think if one looks back in history, compliance amongst the commercial farmers wasn't that great when these technologies were first brought in. Yeah. But when the resistance started sticking its head out, everybody, realized what the loss would be if that technology went. And fortunately, there was another backup one that's working well. So that compliance, 90% is a very good level of compliance if you compare that globally. It's really right up there. So hats off to the farmers. Yeah.
What are the international levels of compliance like?
Yeah, nobody really talks about it a lot, but what I remember from the past, it can vary from 50 to 60%. Again, it depends on the pest as well, and how mobile it is as to what level of compliance you really need to ensure. Yeah. Also the susceptibility of the pest. So if you have a pest that you have like maybe 95% control, 5% is surviving, that's a good recipe to develop resistance if you don't have like 100% compliance. Yeah. If your technology is 99% effective, you can probably come down a little bit on the compliance, and it won't be a train smash. So you have to look at these things pest by pest, sort of farming situation by farming situation. For example, if you look at the BT in cotton, which is targeting Helicoverpa omigera, the American bollworm or African bollworm, to my knowledge, there has not been a single case of resistance against that. It's the same kind of protein that you get in the maize, but the maize pest is different. It's a little bit more mobile. It is more dependent on maize as a food source, whereas American bollworm feeds on a lot of different things. So there's almost like a natural refuge out there. So all of these things have to be taken into consideration when you build that resistance program.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, Chantel, it's a holistic approach that needs to be taken to make sure that resistance management and IPM management is implemented correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing I think also that one needs to take into account, in South Africa, the BT soybean Intacta has just been released. So now there's another, or there will be in the future, another, 1 million hectares or close to 1 million hectares of BT out there on top of the hectares we already have in maize and so on. So all of these things need to be taken into account and managed and monitored. And
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. It was a
Thank you.
fantastic conversation and very interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah.